everyone, Chelene here from Bookworm Adventure Girl. Welcome back, and if you are new, thanks for checking out my channel. Please hit subscribe and stick around. Today I am going to share all of the books that I hauled in October. I have a lot of books to get through. I'm going to actually have to hold the pile. And I'm going to start with the books that I received from publishers. I have a couple of picture books from Highwater Press. They are both by Sara, Florence Davidson and Robert Davidson. And the first is Dancing with Our Ancestors, which tells the story of people gathering for a Haida potlatch. And the illustrations are by Janine Gibbons, and they are stunning. I will show you a couple. The next picture book is called Returning to the Yakoun River, which is about a Haida fish camp, and I'm actually going to be talking about these in a few days when I do my my monthly wrap-up. And then another book that I received from Highwater Press is a graphic novel, which I know is not usually my thing, but this is from Richard Van Camp, who I really want to read, and I actually have other books by him, and I really need to read those as well. This is A Blanket of Butterflies, which is the first volume of, I think it's the Spirit of Denendeh series, and this series is interconnected graphic novels about people living in Fort Smith, Northwest Territories. The stories are about Dene culture and history. The next two books that I already talked about when I did my nonfiction books on my radar. I did that a few days ago, so I will leave a link to that video below if you are interested, especially if you're looking for some nonfiction books. But it includes, from St. Martin's Press, Wild, The Life of Peter Beard by Graham Boynton. And I know next to nothing about Peter Beard, so I'm looking forward to kind of learning more about him. The second book from the nonfiction video is from Douglas and McIntyre, and that is Chasing Rivers, A Whitewater Life by Canadian author Tamar Glouberman, who shares her story of being a rafting guide. And I may also have a surprise coming up about this book, so stay tuned for that. I have 3 books from ZG Stories and Book Press, which is a publisher that I really like. First up is a book that I think had potential to be longlisted for the Giller, and that is Junie by Chelene Knight. And this is a debut novel, and I would say a bit of a coming-of-age story. It has a lot of things that usually appeal to me in a story, so I'm looking forward to this one. The story takes place in the 1930s, and Junie and her mother moved to Hogan's Alley, which is a Black and immigrant community in Vancouver's East End. And Junie's mother is a jazz singer with a growing alcohol dependency, and Junie makes friends with Estelle, whose mother never really wanted a child, and Junie also finds 2 mentors. So I like that this story is narrated by Junie and that it is about mother and daughter relationships. Next from Book Press and ZG Stories is The Animals by Cary Fagan. And this has been likened to Where the Wild Things Are for adults, so that has my attention. The protagonist is Dorn, who makes miniature models, and they begin a program in the village called Wild Home Project. The idea is that people are now living with wild animals, and Dorn becomes a local hero after a fire breaks out, and the story follows his many misadventures. So this book just sounds quirky and fun, and I like that it explores the relationships between humans and other animals with kind of like a fairy tale kind of vibe. And then the last book from ZG Stories and Book Press is Participation by Anna, I think it's Moschovakis. I hope that's correct, and I'm going to actually be mentioning her later on. This book seems to have some interesting elements and structure This book has two reading groups, love and anti-love, and there has been an environmental catastrophe, and these two groups are convening digitally, and different relationships develop. So I'm not completely sure about this one and really what it will be about, but I'm interested to see how it, uses the themes of technology and community, especially reading this, through the lens of having lived through COVID and the pandemic. So we will see how this one goes. This next book I received from the publisher and author, and that is Echoes of War by John Paquin. And if you follow my channel, you might be surprised to see this in my list, because it is not usually the type of book that I would read. This is fantasy, which is not my go-to genre, and it's also adventure, which is more my thing. This takes place during the time of the ancient Assyrians and Egyptians, and it's supposed to incorporate elements of their mythologies, which I'm hoping, will be done well. And then the book includes moral dilemmas and themes of love and leadership. And the things that I thought might make me like this novel is that it also said that there is clever humor and banter among the characters. So again, I do like that. So if it's done well, I think that this could be okay, even though it is outside of my comfort zone. But I know that some of my viewers read this type of book. They like fantasy, and I like to challenge myself once in a while. So hopefully I will end up liking it. The next three books were gifted to me, and first is a picture book called The Land of Cotton Candy Hair by Mackenzie Fraser. And this was a gift from my friend Harrison, one of my colleagues and friends. And I love the illustrations and colors in this. And I think I'm going to like the message as well. This is about a young boy named Bazzy and his father. And they go to the land of cotton candy hair. And Bazzy's father sees potential to make a lot of money with the cotton candy hair. And this, of course, has unfortunate results. So this is a story of generosity, kindness, and respecting one another for our unique qualities. So thanks to Harrison for this one. The next book I received from one of my subscribers and friends, Karen Weatherald, sent The Daughters of the Deer by Danielle Daniel. And Karen and I have done a number of buddy reads at this point, and Karen has, I would say, a pretty good sense of the books that I enjoy. So I am so grateful for this gift. This is an Indigenous story that takes place in the Algonquin territories in the 1600s. And it's inspired by the author's family link to a girl that was murdered near Trois-Rivières. And this story brings the reader to the origin of the history of violence against Indigenous women and the disruption of Indigenous cultures. So I have a feeling that I'm really going to enjoy this one. So thanks again to Karen for thinking of me and for sending this along. Next up is a book that I received on Thanksgiving. We had been invited to join the Franciscan community, which is not too far from here, for their Thanksgiving meal. And one of the friars, Friar Kevin, was telling me about Ilia Delio, who I hadn't heard of, but she has written several books. And Friar Kevin gave me this one, The Humility of God, a Franciscan Perspective, which she uses the theology of Saint Bonaventure and looks at topics of God's relationship to the world and attempts to answer some tough questions like, why is there still suffering in the world if God is so much a part of it? So thanks again to Friar Kevin for gifting me this one. So in October, I also picked up 4 of the 5 shortlisted books for the Giller Prize. I had already read Stray Dogs by Rawi Hage, so I still had to get through the rest of the books, the other 4, in October. And these books were If an Egyptian Cannot Speak English, and this is by Noor Nega. We Measure the Earth with Our Bodies by Sarang Yangzum Lama. Lesser Known Monsters of the 21st Century by Kim Fu. And then the last one is The Sleeping Car Porter by Suzette Mayer. And I'm not talking about any of these, at least not here, because I've already talked about them, and I did a prediction video for who I think, or maybe hope, will be the winner of this year's prize. So I will leave a link in the description box below, so that if you are interested in hearing more about those books and learning more about the Giller, then you can definitely go and check that out. The next book is from the Republic of Consciousness, and it's Awake by Harold Vodeman, I think it's called. Translated from the Danish by Johan Sorgenfri Ottosson. I hope that's correct. For this one, I'm just going to read the back to you because I'm not sure that I can actually sum it up on my own. So the blurb on the back says, "In a shuttered bedroom in ancient Italy, the sleepless Pliny, the elder, lies in bed obsessively dictating new chapters of his natural history to his slave Diocles. Wheezing, imperious, and prone to nosebleeds, Pliny doesn't believe in spending his evenings in repose. No, to be awake is to be alive. There's no time to waste if he is to classify every element of the natural world in a single work. By day, Pliny the Elder carries out his civic duties and gives the occasional disastrous public reading. But despite his astonishing ambition to catalog everything from precious metals to the moon, Pliny the Elder still takes pleasure in the common rose. After rushing to an erupting Mount Vesuvius, Pliny perishes in the ash, and his nephew, Pliny the Younger, becomes custodian of his life's work. But where Pliny the Elder saw starlight, Pliny the Younger only sees fireflies." In masterfully honed prose, Harold Vodeman brings the formidable Pliny the Elder and his pompous nephew to life. Awake is a comic delight about one of history's great minds and the not-so-great human body it was housed in. These next two books on my list have been recently published and are two of my most anticipated books of 2022. First is The Winners by Frederick Backman. This is the third in the Beartown trilogy, which I absolutely love. This is a huge book, though. I was surprised when it arrived, compared to the other two, which were much smaller. And I really, really want to read this right away. And then I also don't want to read it right away because it means it will be over. But I really do want to read it soon. The next book is A Minor Chorus by Billy Ray Belcourt. This was longlisted for this year's Giller Prize, and I'm still a bit surprised that it didn't make the shortlist. But I've talked about this book a number of times, so I will leave a link to my video on Giller Prize longlist hopefuls, because I talk about it there. So you can check that out if you're interested in learning more about this. Plus, I've already started it, so I hope to finish it this month. And this is Belcourt's debut fiction novel, and I will read anything that he publishes. These next books are all books that I got really cheap, some of them for like a toonie, or for non-Canadians, $2. And they are also books that have been on my radar and TBR wish list for quite some time. So first I have The Company We Keep by Frances Itani, and this was longlisted, I believe, for the Giller Prize a number of years ago. And this is one of those instances where I have other books by this author waiting on my shelf to be read. I haven't read any of them, and then here I am, picking up another one. So does anyone else do that? I do that a little too much. My understanding of this book is that it brings 6 characters together as part of a conversation group, and each member tells their story. There are themes of grief and bereavement, starting over, and just people coming together from different walks of life. So I think that I'm most curious to see what this group shares with each other and how these relationships are formed. And then maybe equally as important is the things that they don't share and the things that they choose to keep to themselves. Up next is a book that I have seen all over BookTube, and that is Days Without End by Sebastian Barry. This won the Costa Book Award in 2016, and I've really only heard good things about it. I originally talked about putting this on my TBR after hearing AJ from AJ Dunn Reads and Writes talk about this book, and they really enjoyed it. And since then, I have heard so many others have really good things to say about it as well. So I am excited to see for myself what the hype is about. This story takes place in the 1850s when Thomas McNulty signs up for the U.S. Army. And I believe that it is where he meets John Cole, and the two of them fall in love. So I think for this one, I'm interested in seeing how the author writes the same-sex relationship, especially for this time and place. Another BookTube favorite has been A Passage North by Anouk Arud-Pragazam. I'm not sure how to say that. This has won several awards, and a number of people have recommended it to me, including Fraser from Fraser Simon's Springboard Thought. What interests me, I think, most in reading this is that the book is about and takes place in Sri Lanka, which is not a place that I often read about or a place that I really know a lot about. The book also starts in, I would say, an intriguing way with an unexpected death, and just the description of that kind of makes me feel like this will be an intense read. Next on the pile is When We Were Vikings by Andrew David MacDonald. And this book has been on my radar for some time, but finally moved up the TBR when this was part of Craving Can Lit. I hadn't realized that this was written by a Canadian author from Edmonton, and I've heard so many good things about this book. It has a lot of things about it that I think I will love, starting with the protagonist Zelda, who just seems to be a bit of a quirky character, which you all know I love, and she has a passion for Vikings, and I'm just looking forward to kind of following her quest of being legendary. So I do hope to actually get to this one soon. The Weight of Ink by Rachel Kaddish is next, and this is one that has been on my radar for, I would say, at least 5 years. One of my friends had read this with her book club and really raved about it and said that I would like it. And it's another book that has a number of things about it that I usually like. The main characters are strong women. It's told in 2 timelines, 1660s London, England, and then in 2000. Helen Watt is a historian who is asked to look over some Jewish documents from the 17th century, and in order to figure out who wrote the documents. And the other woman we meet is Esther, who is permitted to scribe for a blind rabbi. So that might seem like it gives something away, but I have a feeling that there's a lot more to this story. Okay, we are getting close to the end here, and the last of the books that have been on my radar for a while is At Night All Blood is Black by David Diop, and this is translated from the French by Anna Moschovakis, who I mentioned earlier in this video because she is the author of Participation. So this book has me intrigued because it is about a man whose friend and fellow soldier dies during World War I, and the man begins assassinating German soldiers, cutting off their hands and kind of keeping them as trophies. So this is one that I think I will have to be in the right mood for. It's a bit of a darker war type read, but it's also a quick read too. I think it comes in at like less than 150 pages. And the last 3 books on my list I picked up as I am preparing for a project next year that my friend and fellow booktuber AJ from AJ Dunn Reads and Writes, both of us are doing this project that we've kind of been foreshadowing every once in a while in our videos. So I'm not going to talk about these books really, since I actually know next to nothing about them, and I kind of want to keep it that way until we begin our project. But I will at least show them to you. So I have Tar Baby by Toni Morrison, Love by Toni Morrison, and Home by Toni Morrison. So you can probably pick up on the theme of our project for next year. So that is all of the books. I think it's close to 30 books. It's craziness. That I hauled in October. So please let me know if you have read any of these, if you're interested in any of these. Where do you think I should start first? What do you think I should prioritize? Be happy to hear your thoughts on that. I look forward to chatting with you in the comments. Thanks again for watching. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and don't forget to make every day an adventure.